We are now getting ready for the Yontif of Pesach, and there are very beautiful, fascinating things to learn that will hopefully make everyone's Pesach much more meaningful. The first thing to mention, which is very, very important, that the Arizal says that every Yontif, it is not only that we are celebrating what happened in the past, but it happens again when the time comes, let's say, Mirz Hashem, the 15th day of Nisan, the night of Pesach. Everything that happened, the revelation that happened the first time, repeats itself, and even stronger, every year stronger than ever before. So we're not just celebrating something that happened, but something that is happening. And we need to tune in. Lahavdil, it's like lahavdil, like a station, something is on air, some television or program, but you got to turn the knob to that station. So when you tune in, when you keep the mitzvahs of that yontif, that tunes you in to what is happening on this yontif. So it's very real and very powerful. That's number one. Number two, the yontif of Pesach has several different names. It's called Chag Hamatzos. It's called Zaman Cheruseinu, the time that we were liberated, freed. And it's also called Chag Hamatzos, Man Cheruseinu, and I forgot already, but it's also Chodesh.
Chag HaAviv.
What?
Chag HaAviv.
Chag HaAviv. But there was one more thing. Chag HaMatzos. Oh, Pesach. Pesach. The Yontif, one of the names is Chag HaPesach. Like you see in the Shmoneh Esrei and in the Kiddush, we say Chag HaPesach. So we're going to touch on a few of these names. Zaman Cheruseinu, the time that we were liberated. The Holy Maharal Miprag, and the Rebbe always quotes this Maharal. The Maharal says that Yontif of Pesach gave us a whole different status, that we became a free nation. What means a free? That no one could dictate on our neshama. The neshama of a yid, no one could dictate, only Hashem. We became liberated. Before we were slaves to Pharaoh. And in the Ruchnius, it means that sometimes we could be serving or being in bondage in our own animalistic soul. We're stuck with our own issues. But the Yontif of Pesach gave the Yidden that they are free people. The neshama is free. No one could dictate what a Yid should do. The question is, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, there is no free person than a person that is studying Torah, meaning following the Torah. So the question is, if you take religion seriously, you're not exactly free. the, the Torah doesn't let you live. Do this, don't do this. There's nothing in the world that the Torah doesn't have something specific to say about every move in life. So how is that freedom? And yet the Mishnah says there's no free person than a person who follows the Torah. The answer is we're talking about our neshama. The neshama is in bondage because the neshama comes from such a holy, holy place and was sent down in a body and with an animalistic soul. So the soul is really in bondage. But when we do a mitzvah, we let our neshama free. That's what our neshama really wants to do. So why is it called freedom? Of course, the Torah is rigid, very, very specific, what to do, what you cannot do. But if you're talking about a different idea, but my neshama is free, because that's what I really want to do. My neshama yearns for this. So Pesach is a yontif to concentrate, to let our neshama really free. Once and for all, not just from Pesach, but we should always remember, who am I? I am a neshama. My neshama yearns for God, and the way to connect is through Torah and mitzvahs. That's freedom. Freedom for my neshama. Very interesting. Hold on to your chairs. There is a mitzvah in the Torah, men and women, to remember that we left Mitzrayim, the miracle. Every day of our lives, we have to remember that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. And we say this about Mitzrayim, we say this in the Shema, in the third part of the Krishma by Yomer, but it is something that we have to remember every day of our lives. Why? Okay, it's a miracle, very important miracle. But why is it we gotta remember every day? Don't forget we left Mitzrayim. The Alter Rebbe in Perik Mem Zion, the 47th chapter, which anyone who wants to do themselves a favor and experience Pesach like he never had before, you got to read that chapter, not once, but 5 times. It's a very short chapter, but it's firecrackers. What does the Alter Rebbe say? The Alter Rebbe says the mitzvah of remembering Mitzrayim means to remember that I am in Mitzrayim. My soul is locked up in a body, in an animalistic soul. It wants to breathe. It wants to be freed. We gotta constantly be aware that my soul is in Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim means it's restricted, it's in bondage. So that should be a motivation to always do mitzvahs, to learn Torah, because or else my soul is suffocating. I don't know what goes on in Israel, but I remember 20 years ago, there used to be such a thing as phone booth. Is that still around in Israel today? Little telephone booth, you hardly enough just to stand there. Your neshama is also in a phone booth, locked up in a body. They don't even know how to communicate. The soul is only interested in Hashem. In our body, and our animalistic soul is interested in just having a good time. So neshama is bondage. Says the Alter Rebbe. Remembering that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim means I gotta remember to let my soul out from Mitzrayim. How? By doing Torah, learning Torah, and doing mitzvahs. Every time I do a mitzvah, there's two things happening. I'm letting my soul free, but I'm also at the same time connecting with God Himself. And here comes something in this Perek, which is the shortest Perek in the whole Tanya, but it's loaded with dynamite. The Alter Rebbe says in that chapter, in the Kiddush of Yontif, and in the Shmonesrei of Yontif, maybe this will sound familiar. We say, Vatiten lanu Hashem Elokeinu bi'ahava. You gave us, God, our God, you gave us with love, moadim l'simcha, holidays to rejoice, chagim uzmanim l'sasa. Does that sound familiar to anybody? That we say that every Kiddush in Yontif, and in every Shmonesrei we say that. Comes the Alter Rebbe in that 47th chapter and says, you're not reading it right. You got to read it this way. Vatiten lanu, you gave us. You know what you gave us? Yourself. Vatiten lanu, Hashem Elokeinu. You gave yourself away. How is that? By the mitzvahs. Chagim uzmanim l'sasayin. This is a fire word. Everybody reads this sentence. You gave us with love the yontif. The Alter Rebbe said, stop. Vatiten lanu. What did you give? You gave yourself. You put yourself in the mitzvah. Vatiten lanu Hashem Elokeinu. So if that's the pshat, then every time a yid does a mitzvah, two things are happening. I'm letting my soul free out of my own Mitzrayim, but I'm connecting with God Himself. This is nuts. In the time of Pesach, there was two stages. Going out of Mitzrayim was one thing, and after 49 days of counting, then we came to Matan Torah. So it didn't happen at once. But today, when a Yid does a mitzvah, or a Yid learns Torah, what's going on? He's going out of Mitzrayim, and he's uniting with Hashem Himself. Is there any more that you could want? Is there any more than Hashem? So therefore, let's go now to the Seder. We're going to sit at the Seder, and if we're just going to think about what happened in the past, it's not enough. You got to talk to yourself and say, you know what? I am going to get out of my Mitzrayim. I got to talk to myself. I got the jump start. Hashem made the jump start. He initiated, He took us out of Mitzrayim. But now I got to take myself out of Mitzrayim. That's called liberation. And now we're going to talk about, we all know that chametz for Pesach, it's the worst. We're not allowed to eat it. We're not allowed to own it. We're not allowed to benefit any kind of benefit. Why? On Pesach. Okay, if you read the story in the Haggadah or in the Torah, we know there was a story that the dough didn't have time to rise. There's a lot of it is really unclear. Why? Just because of that, aren't we allowed to possess chametz, own chametz? Why? And why only Pesach? If chametz is something terrible, why a whole year we can eat it? Pesach, it's not permitted. And to get to Pesach, you got to get rid of the chametz. So what's this? What is the interpretation of Pi Chasidis? Why is Pesach forbidden chametz, and only Pesach, not a whole year? So maybe we first have to go back and remind ourselves, because everyone was listening to the shiurim on the Yud Gimel, the 13 principles of faith. And everybody remembers, I'm sure, that we talked about that the translation of the word Hashem, soon as you say the word Hashem, we're not speaking about somebody upstairs, the creator, the infinite. It's much more. Hashem, soon as you say the word Hashem, it means there's only Hashem. There's nothing else besides Hashem. There is nothing else besides Hashem. That's the Alpi Chasidis. That's the meaning of the word Hashem Echad. This is a tough pill to swallow. If Hashem is just great, the creator, and he's infinite, okay, that doesn't take anything away from me. I'm not in competition with him. I'm just a finite. We get along. He's in his place, I'm in my place, and we communicate from time to time. However, if Hashem means he's the only existence, wow, wait, what about me? What am I, a mashed potato? So me and Hashem, we don't get along. Hashem says, I'm the only thing that there is. And I feel the whole day I'm the only thing there is. We don't see eye to eye. What is the biggest problem? Our ego. Ego doesn't mean only I feel that I'm better than somebody else or greater than somebody else. Ego could also mean that I am something separate. There is God and there's me. That is not true. There is no me. Devora, you're doing something else or you're listening? You listen. Okay, because if you're doing something else, I need you to listen. So let's go back. Hashem is Echad. Echad means he's the only existence. Chametz represents, what's the difference between matz? I have a shear now.
Don't forget your vacation.
Oh. Matzah means it's just flat. It doesn't rise. It just what it is what it is. Simplicity. Chametz represents it blows up. Blows up. There's nothing in it. There's nothing more. It's just air. There's no basis on being a somebody. Chametz represents I am something separate, and therefore I have my own being. That is a contradiction to what Hashem is. Now, Pesach is the birth of the Jewish nation. This is what it says in the Cheskel Hanavi, calls Pesach the birth of Am Yisrael. When it comes to the birth, to the foundation from where we begin, there can't be any ego. We have to start with the basis, Hashem is Echad. After we get to that point, we got that good into our system, then we could go further and utilize my own intellect, my own feelings, and give them to Hashem. But to start, the foundation of the Jewish nation is I am totally subservient to Hashem, no ego. And now, here comes something very exciting that you could talk to your husbands and children this coming Seder. Everybody knows, I hope, that the Jews were commanded to eat matzah in Mitzrayim before they left. Why? There was no Yetzias Mitzrayim yet. Why are they eating matzah? They had to eat matzah. They had to have a sandwich with the korban Pesach and Morah. Some sandwich was that. And they had to eat that before midnight. The korban Pesach could not be eaten after. So when did they have a mitzvah to eat matzah? Before, while they were in Mitzrayim. So what happens if your child or your husband or yourself are going to ask, so why did the Yidden eat matzah in Mitzrayim when the whole idea is about Yitzias Mitzrayim, and we're here, we didn't even leave yet, and Hashem says, eat matzah. Did anybody wonder about this question? Any response? Meryl, Leah, Moshe? I'm asking for
It's a
help.
good question.
What?
It's a good question.
That's it. That's what I wanted to hear.
Well,
It's a
if-
very strong question.
but
Okay.
how can you be taken out of Mitzrayim if you don't have the Beetle in the first place?
Okay, that's a separate thing, but I'm asking the question al pi nigla, a simple question. Why were they commanded to eat matzah in Mitzrayim when they didn't even leave yet? There's going to be more questions, but this is the first question. Then there's another question, and then everybody needs to concentrate. The story that we say in the Haggadah, that the dough didn't have time to rise and therefore it didn't become chametz and they ate matzah. What are we talking about? We got to know this history of what we're talking about. That's not the matzah that the Yidden ate in Mitzrayim. The dough that didn't have time to rise, it's a whole different story. When did Hashem take the Jews out of Mitzrayim? My dear friends, at midnight was Makas Bechoros. King Pharaoh was freaking out because he was also a Bechor. He wanted everybody to leave now. Guess what? The Yidden said, we can't leave now. Hashem said, no one is allowed to leave at night. the Malach no one can leave. So when did the Jews leave? Not at night. You know when they left? 12 o'clock on the day of Pesach. Be'etzem hayoyim hazeh, when it was real day, that's when they left. What happened? They were rushed. So they took dough, took some water and flour, and they mixed it up, and they put it on their back in a bag, whatever, knapsack, and they went to a place called Ramses. From Mitzrayim to Ramses could have taken a few days. Hashem made a miracle that they got to Ramses right away. It's called in Hebrew, Kefitzas Haderech. Hashem made something supernatural. A few million Jews got to Ramses within, let's say, a half hour or something. What happened? When they landed Ramses, they were hungry. So they took the dough that was on their back and they baked it. And that matzah, we read in the Haggadah, it's a pasuk in the Torah, that dough did not have time to rise. And therefore, it turned out that it was matzah. So first we got to understand, we're talking about two different matzahs. The matzah that they ate in Mitzrayim was not because they were rushed, and there was no rush, and Hashem said you have to eat matzah. Then there was another matzah, which they didn't even have to eat. There was no mitzvah to eat matzah, but they were hungry, whatever, so they baked that matzah. And that dough did not have time to rise, and they baked it and they ate that matzah. So now the question is a very strong question. How do we say at the Haggadah, at the Seder, the matzah that we are eating now is because of the matzah that didn't have time to rise? What are you talking about? That was after midnight, was the next day. So what are we mixing boidim with lakshin? We're eating matzah before chatzos, like the Jews then also ate before chatzos. And yet we're saying matzah zu she'anu oichlim al shumah. Why are we eating matzah? And guess what you answer? Because the dough didn't have time to rise. What? That was the next day, and that was, what are you mixing these two stories up? This is very strong questions. The Jews did not eat matzah in Mitzrayim because of the dough that is not going to rise later the next day. So why do we say that that's the matzah? The reason we're eating matzah is for that matzah that didn't rise. Does everybody understand the question?
There's two matzahs. There's two
Right.
matzot.
Exactly.
There's the matzot of the commandment to eat matzah.
Beautiful.
And then there's the b'chipazon, the rushing out the door when you had no
Beautiful.
time to make a
Right.
sandwich.
Yes. And if that's, now that you got it, now the question is, so why do we say that the matzah that we are eating before chatzais in your home, it's because of that matzah? Why? Got it? Leah?
Yeah, but I think that the matzah that we're saying that we're eating in our home is the matzah of being taken out the actual physical taken out, I
Yes,
think.
you beautiful, but it still did. That's not what happened. The Yidden ate matzah before Chatzos, and it had nothing to do with that matzah.
Right.
And we are eating matzah before Chatzos. So why is our matzah connected to that, and their matzah was not connected to that?
Well, is part of it, for example, that Avraham Avinu, when the Malachim came to announce the birth of Yitzchak, he served matzot. We're told that was Pesach time.
Yeah, beautiful.
So there's something associated with the matzah of Pesach, but part of our having to finish the meal before Chatzot is to remember that there was an element of rushing, an
My
element
dear,
of time.
the rushing that we eat before Chatzos is for a whole different reason, because the carbon Pesach were not allowed to be eaten after Chatzos. So the matzah that the Jews ate then had to be together with the carbon Pesach, and the carbon Pesach cannot be eaten after Chatzos. So why do we have to say that the matzah that we eat is because of the rushing that happened later, but the matzah that we ate in Mitzrayim, we have to eat it before Chatzos because the carbon Pesach has to be before Chatzos. So why did it change that this matzah that we eat now is connected to the second matzah, which wasn't even a mitzvah, it just was a circumstance? Then there is another question, and everything is going to fall into place very soon. Then there's another question. How come it didn't become chametz? Do you know that we all know that when you mix water and flour, you only have up to 18 minutes that it shouldn't become chametz, right? So how could it be that that dough that the Jews took out of Mitzrayim, coming in, landing in Ramses, was that less than 18 minutes? There's no way. So I'm asking a technical question. With the rushing, rush here, rush there, a few million people, with their donkeys, with their camels, with all their whatever they took along, this was all less than 18 minutes? So how could it be that it didn't get chametz? Does everybody understand this question?
But that maybe that's part of the miracle.
Yeah, but my dear friend, you're right. But the wording is that why didn't it become chametz? We don't say because of a miracle. We say because we were rushed. So we're sort of putting this into a physical story, that we were rushed, so it didn't have time to rise.
Well, maybe all the miracles that transpired during the time of their Yetzias Mitzrayim, that they put the blood and they saw the Malach HaMavis was killing everybody but the Jews, and all this created in them the kind of bittul that was manifested later by not having any matzah rise. They have become
you're getting warm. You're getting close to the answer. Okay, we're going to just bring it down with much more explanation, but you're touching on something. Okay, so here comes an unbelievable thing. The Alter Rebbe writes that the reason that the Yidden were commanded to eat matzah in Mitzrayim was completely for a different reason. Not about Yetzias Mitzrayim, but we needed it while we were in Mitzrayim. Why? Says there's a Gemara, and this is very good for all the mothers to know, for even if you're a grandmother. The Gemara says that a little child does not recognize who is their father or mother as a parent only when they begin to eat wheat. Today we use beech nut cereal. I don't know what you have in Eretz Yisrael, but you gotta give them dagan, wheat. That wheat gives them das, that they could recognize and become attached like a child to a parent. Mystical thing. The Talmud doesn't say why does it have to be dagan. It's just a statement. If they don't eat dagan, the father and the mother could be like a familiar face. It could be like a babysitter, but Abba, Ima, that's only when they begin to eat dagan. Why dagan? Comes Chassidus and explains something very interesting. The shoresh, everything on this world begins on a higher world. The source of dagan is das. Das means attachment. Like it says in the Torah, when Adam had relations with Chava, what does it say in the Torah? Vayeda Adam es Chava. Das means attachment. There is an opinion in the Gemara that when Hashem forbid Adam and Chava to eat from the tree of knowledge, so in the storybooks, somehow, I don't know where this came, is that it was an apple, but it's full of baloney. There's no opinion that it was an apple. There's an opinion that it was an esrog. There's an opinion that it was a grape. There's an opinion that it was a fig. And then there is an opinion it was a stalk of wheat. What do you say to that? Chita. It was really wheat. Oh, so if we follow that opinion, that it was chita, wheat, now everything falls into place. Because the tree of knowledge of das was a chita. So chita is connected to das. Oh, so when a baby eats chita, dagan, he develops this das, that this is his mother and father. Very interesting. Just for a few minutes, let's go back to the Eitz Hadas. When you read this in English, in translation, knowledge, tree of knowledge, you don't even understand. So what's so bad of having knowledge of good and bad? It might be a good idea. If you know what's good and you know what's bad, then you'll know what to stay away from. So why did Hashem object that Adam and Chava should not eat from the tree of knowledge? The answer is that is not knowledge. Das is much more than das, than knowledge. Das means attachment. So when once Adam and Chava ate from the tree of knowledge of das, of Eitz Hadas, Tov v'Ra, they became attached to Ra and Tov. But once they became attached, you can never lose it. That is why Hashem was so concerned that Adam and Chava should not eat that, because no longer will they be objective. It will be a part of who they are. Das of Tov v'Ra, attachment of good and bad. That is why What was one of the punishments for eating of the tree of knowledge? Hashem said, man will have to die. Why such a harsh punishment for just eating one time the forbidden fruit, whatever it was? The answer is every punishment, we talked about this before, every punishment is really not a punishment just to punish. Every punishment is a cleansing that removes the stain that you accumulated through the sin. Once Adam and Chava, they became a part of this das of Tovara, they got to get rid of that. But if they will die and their body will disintegrate, then when it'll come the time of resurrection of the dead, the body will be purified from the Eitz Hadas because it went through this cleansing. So getting back to the ranch. So Dagon, the source of Dagon is Das. If that's the case, now the Jewish people were also like infants and they need to eat a special kind of Dagon to recognize that Hashem is my Abba and Ima. The same idea. We cannot have this attachment to Hashem without eating that matzah. So this is the reason that Hashem commanded the Yidden to eat matzah in Mitzrayim, because the first thing you just were born, you gotta develop an attachment to who is your Abba. This is a fascinating story. So why does it have to be matzah? Why can't it be chametz? So the answer is obvious, because matzah means humble. Chametz is ego. To be attached to Hashem, Hashem means he's the only existence. If you have ego, you can't be attached. It's a head-on collision with Hashem. So in order to attach yourself to Hashem, there's no room for ego whatsoever. So the kind of dagan one needs to eat on Pesach is matzah. Does everybody follow me so far?
Yeah, I follow you, but I think you've just brought up the question again because you still have two matzahs.
Wait, you think I'm not leaving yet. I'm just building it up. You're gonna flip out when you hear the rest. Listen to the next part. So now, every year Pesach, when we eat matzah, this coming Seder, we gotta know it's a biblical commandment to eat matzah. No matter what it does, even if it doesn't do, if it will be crepe paper, if it would be wood, if Hashem said to eat it, we eat it because Hashem said so. However, in mysticism, in the Zohar and in Chassidus, it explains that this matzah that a Yid eats before Chatzos, this matzah is soul food. This feeds you with amunah, das, an attachment to Hashem that is beyond rationale. So that's number one. This is incredibly holy food that strengthens the amunah of every Yid. That was the matzah that the Yidden ate then, and that is the matzah that we eat before Chatzos is coming Seder night. Here comes the next part. What happened? We read at the Seder, and it's in the Chumash, but we don't get it. We missed the boat. we read that Bachatzos Laila, midnight, Hashem revealed himself, not through a shliach, not through a malach. The Hashem himself revealed himself. Why? Well, most Jews, unfortunately, think that this was all to make makas bechoros, because the angel of death does not know who is really a bchor, because there were all kinds of women, had many men, and every bchor was killed. How would the malach know who is a bchor? So Hashem himself had to tell the malach who is who. So when we read the Haggadah, we could make a mistake and think that the Gilui of Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, was really to kill the Egyptians' firstborn. But it's totally wrong. The Gilui of Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, was for the Jews. The Eibishter revealed his being into every Jew. Like the Haggadah says, Umora Gadal Zu Gilui Shchina. Gilui Shchina is not for no Goyim. Gilui Shchina of Melech, Malchei Hamlachim was for the Jews. So this is something very interesting. There was a tremendous revelation at midnight for the Jews. It also was helpful for Makas Bechoros, but the intention was mainly for the Yidden. Now comes the Alter Rebbe. If you're ready, now I think Meryl hit it on the nose. The Alter Rebbe says that the Gilui of Melech Malchei Hamlachim went into the matzah. The physical matzah that the Yidden ate when they got to Ramses and they baked that matzah. This wasn't simple matzah. There was such holiness in this matzah. It was the Gilui of Melech Malchei Hamlachim that went into the matzah. Says the Alter Rebbe, if that's the case, so it couldn't have become chametz. If chametz means ego, and in this matzah was the revelation in the matzah, when God reveals himself, there's no chametz. There can't be no chametz. So because spiritually there couldn't be no chametz, so physically it couldn't have been chametz. Because everything, what goes on the spiritual level, manifests itself in the physical. So when we asked the question before, how come it didn't become chametz? You're right. It should have, because it was for sure more than 18 minutes. But it didn't become chametz because there was such great revelation in the matzah that did not let any ego, and therefore it didn't become chametz automatically. Is that what you meant, Meryl?
Well, I should hope that, but
Okay.
probably what you meant was much, much more specific.
Okay, so now let's make a little summation. Now we understand the Haggadah. The matzah that we eat now is different than in the time when the Yidden were in Mitzrayim. When the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, there were two separate matzahs. There was the matzah before Chatzos, which was soul food to have a das that Hashem is our Abba. The matzah that we ate after Chatzos was a gilui of Melech Malchei Hamlachim, unbelievable. But now we are after we left Mitzrayim. We are after Matan Torah. When we have, once there was Matan Torah, every mitzvah that we do we bring Hashem himself into the physical world. So we today could make the matzah that we eat before Chatzos to have the value of the matzah that was then after Chatzos. So we have now 2 in 1. So when we eat matzah this coming Seder before Chatzos, we have both madregas in 1. We have the matzah because you have to have soul food to recognize Hashem is my Father. But I also have, in the matzah that I eat before Chatzos, I have the gilui of Melech Malchei Hamlachim in the matzah that I eat before Chatzos. Isn't that interesting? Does everybody understand?
I think we have to process this.
Okay. Did I lose Devorah Ohayon?
She's on mute.
Yeah, but is she still around? Devorah? She went
Still
off.
here.
Devorah, you listening?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Do you get it what I'm saying?
Yeah, look, you have to process it because it's it's a lot to take in.
But the main punchline is that the matzah is so holy. Incredible. The gilui of Melech Malchei Hamlachim in the matzah, in the physical matzah. It says in Chassidus that the whole week of Pesach, the matzah is holy, godly. So your physical body is living off godliness. There's no such food in the whole year. The manna that the Yidden ate in the Midbar, says the Gemara, that this was so important. If they didn't eat the man, they couldn't have gotten to Matan Torah. They needed the man to give them a way to get to Matan Torah. We have a whole week that when we eat matzah, what you're living off godliness, your physical flesh and blood is living off holiness. It's incredible.
Can I ask you a question then? What is the place of the Korban Pesach? We have a Korban Chagiga, and we have a Korban Chagiga, we understand more or less.
No,
but
we
here,
put down, I don't know how your minhag is, but we put a neck, right?
yeah,
Okay, but we don't eat it. We purposely don't eat it because we're not allowed to remember that it's the kachim. You can't eat outside of Eretz Yisrael, and you have to be betare. We're not if we're taka remembering the Korban Pesach. So the Korban Pesach you can't eat. You got to be in the state of purity, and you gotta be in Yerushalayim. So we look at it and we talk about it, but we don't eat it. But today we're not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. And the Afikoman, according to many opinions, the Afikoman represents the Korban Pesach, because the Korban Pesach was supposed to be eaten as a delicacy, like a dessert. So we eat it in the end of the meal, and that is to remember the Korban Pesach. Interesting?
it's just I'm trying to put together the two ideas of the matzah, which is a total bittul,
Yes.
and the Korban Pesach.
Korban Pesach is a whole different idea. Korban Pesach also is a bittul because you take your head. Korban had to be eaten, everything together from the head to the. We give over ourselves completely to Hashem. We're all to everything. Total commitment. Total bittul.
Rabbi Garari, I think one of the awesomeness, one of the overwhelming things about the matzah, based upon Chassidus, from what you said, is that we actually have to be very conscious and mindful when we eat the matzah of the dual aspect of the fact that
You
it
couldn't
isn't
say it
so.
better. 100%. I want to tell you something. Every mitzvah, when we learn Hasidus and we learn about the mitzvah, we're supposed to try to experience that when we do the mitzvah. Every mitzvah has incredible significance. And when we are conscious of this and we try to connect to that, we do connect. We got to realize that this matzah, the first and most form of, before everything, we have to have the kavanah. That's the halacha. You have to have the kavanah. I'm eating it. Asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysav. You commanded us to do it. That's number one. We're fulfilling a command of Hashem. But once we have that in our system, I'm doing it because God commanded us to do it, then I'm obligated to think that also the tremendous significance of what this matzah will do for me. This is going to strengthen my emunah for the rest of my life. And we need this strength because we flip-flop 100 times a day. We believe and then we forget what we believe and we act and we forget. So we need that this emunah should be really a part of our lives. We all suffer from this syndrome. You know, the Gemara says, I mentioned this last time we talked about it. The Gemara says you could believe and you could contradict yourself. And the Gemara gives an example. You could be chas v'sholem a ganif, and right before you make a holdup, you could pray to God, please help me be successful with this holdup. How could you ask God success to go against him? The answer is belief. We don't realize what we believe. We need a lot of work to internalize the belief. And that's what the matzah does. The matzah makes that the emunah that we have should be real and internalized.
Well, Rabbi Gurari, can I ask you a specific question when you spoke about, and this relates to this, that when you believe that Hashem is the only existence,
right,
and yet you still exist,
right,
and then when you try to internalize this and live your life, you use your talents for Hashem. I think that there's a switching point here.
Oh, this is
that many
you know what
have gotten it wrong, and they die because they are completely involved in the kedusha of Hashem. We have many in the many. We just have with Aaron Kohen and the many of the Tanaim that we see that, and yet again there's an expectation for us to be aware of this, and yet at the moment you take this awareness and you have to move back into your consciousness in your body. There's a battle over there that
you are 100% on board, and I'm very happy that you brought this up. That's how Hasidus explains why right after Pesach chametz is okay, and on Shavuos in the Beis Hamikdash there was a carbon. They made 2 chalas that was chametz. So in other words, once you have the foundation, which is on Pesach, then you got to use your own talents, your own seichel, and every part of you, but it's based on this notion of what you accepted on Pesach. That's exactly, you hit it on that's the explanation. There's a time that you got to get the foundation straight. But once you have that Pesach, then You can use your own ego to use it for avodas Hashem.
But the people who really do this, it's still a difficult task. Like we know that the Rebbe always had a midpachat. He had a handkerchief in his hand. And there was something to connect them because the teva,
100% right. This is the struggle in life. The struggle is, on one hand, we got to remember that the bottom line is that there's only the Eibishter. On the other hand, he made us, our own nature is that we feel that we are in existence. It's his fault. He made us that way. It's not something that we chose. He made us that we do have an animalistic soul that feels itself as a separate entity. And the whole avodah is to take our godly soul and try to refine our animalistic soul. But Pesach is the time that we identify with our neshama. We identify with the absolute, the ultimate truth. We got to concentrate on that. That's Pesach. Internalize it, becoming a part of my life. Then we take that back to with our animalistic soul. And animalistic soul has a whole different outlook in life. And Hashem gave us that purposely because he gets a special pleasure of us refining our animalistic soul. But we have the tools because we have a Pesach before. So you're right, it is a struggle. We're not going to be like Nadav and Avihu. I guarantee you we're not going to, we'll hang out down here. But we need to know the truth. We need to always go back to Pesach. And I'm sure you know this, according to the Jewish calendar, Pesach is the first Yom Tov, because the calendar goes by the month. The first month of the year is Nisan. So we start with that bittul, and we go on from that foundation. So let me just conclude because it's getting a little late. The idea of Pesach is reliving, going out of my own Mitzrayim. All the things that we're going to do is real. It's happening again. I got to get out of, liberate my own neshama. I need to have soul food to strengthen. All these things are real. It's incredibly holy days. And it gives us all the ammunition for the whole year. But we have, in order to get the Pesach, we have to clean out the chametz. Spiritually, we gotta be willing to let go from the chametz. We gotta do some soul searching to get into Pesach. You can't hold on to the chametz and enjoy Pesach. You gotta let go of the chametz. So everybody should be blessed with a kosher and a freilich and Pesach. You should have the most meaningful Pesach that you ever had. We hope that Mashiach will come before Pesach. If God forbid he does not come, this is going to be the last Pesach in Golus. We got to make this the most meaningful Pesach that we ever had. Everyone should be blessed with a wonderful Freiliche Yontif.
Thank you.